This video is all about the MOZA Air 2 and whether this gimbal is a good gimbal or not. So I've had this gimbal for a little while now, and I've been taking it with me and shooting in some different scenarios, and I've really been trying to get a feel for this gimbal and whether I like it or not. Now, what makes this gimbal stand out from other gimbals is that it is big, it's heavy, but it can also carry bigger and heavier cameras. So for me, I shoot on the Panasonic GH5, which isn't a massive camera, it's not big, but if you wanted to shoot on something like an FS5 or even like a Red, you could put it on this gimbal. So that's where this gimbal shines. It's gonna be geared towards bigger cameras, which gives you the ability to basically use a ton of different cameras on this gimbal. Now, it's got some awesome features packed into it that is definitely geared towards people who are creating content and moving between different pieces of gear. So first, it's got a 16-hour battery life, and what's really cool about the battery system is that this gimbal can power your light, your monitor, your follow focus, or even your camera by just connecting it to the handle. So I think that's a really cool feature in that if you are adding things onto this gimbal, you can power them off of the batteries that are in the gimbal itself. And since it has a 16-hour battery life, when you plug in other devices, obviously that goes down, but 16 hours is a long time. It's got a lot of power, and it's got power to juice all the different things that you need to be able to get the shots that you need. Also on the handle, you have your focus control, which you can actually map out in your menu system to do other things like control the roll of your gimbal. One thing I really like is that there is an auto tuning feature, so you don't have to dive into the settings if you don't want to. However, what's really cool about this gimbal is that you can go through and set up all the settings independently. So you can set up each motor independently, how much power you want to send to each motor, and you can really just dial it in for your setup. Now, this is something I really like because it's all on the handle. There is a lot of things accessible through the handle menu system, which is something that I prefer over other gimbals where you have to attach a phone to change all your settings. So with this, you have a little menu system, and then as you go through, you could see that there are a lot of different options. You can go on and turn on and off each motor in a follow mode through the menu system, and then you also have a few buttons on the outside that will change different settings. Now, this gimbal has a trigger. The trigger is really helpful on this gimbal because when you're in a follow mode, you hold the trigger and it will lock. So you basically have access to the follow mode that you're using, and when you hold the trigger, it locks in place, which gives you the ability to, lock it. And I've used this feature a lot when I'm out shooting. Also, with the trigger, you can spin the camera so it faces you, faces your face, and then you could also just recenter the camera. Having all of these different features on the handle and just a few clicks away makes it so that this gimbal really works in a lot of different situations, and it makes it easy to find the settings that you need to get the shots that you want. Now, also on the handle, you have the ability to control recording, your zoom, your focus, your ISO, your shutter, your exposure compensation, and your white balance. So if you connect this to your camera and it works with a bunch of different cameras, I highly suggest checking the website to make sure yours is compatible. But what's cool is you can control your camera settings just on the handle grip itself. It makes it so you don't ever have to touch your camera, so once it's balanced, you just have to touch the different features on the actual handle itself. And then on the back, you have another spot where you can attach things like your monitor or your microphone, and then on the bottom, it's got two different sizes of screws. Depending on your needs, you can add additional products to this to be able to use it. So it's got a lot of elements built into the handle, which makes it very easy and accessible to dial in your settings and just work with this gimbal. Now, something that I really like is that it takes a standard Manfrotto plate, and this plate very easily locks onto the gimbal so that you can pull it off, move to your tripod, move to your other products that might have a Manfrotto plate, but it just makes it so that this gimbal works within your whole ecosystem, so you don't have to buy an additional adapter to put onto your gimbal so that you can have a Manfrotto plate. And that's something I really like about this gimbal. So in terms of stability, let's talk about this gimbal. I've shot in a bunch of different settings. I've been shooting in different power strengths, and I've noticed that this gimbal isn't like the smoothest gimbal out there on the planet. And no gimbal's perfect. There never is a perfect gimbal. There's always gonna be issues. But I've noticed that this gimbal, depending on your setting, will start to sway a little bit left and right, which is telling me that I probably don't have enough power running to the motors. But then if you put too much power to the motors, then you're gonna start getting some jittering. So it takes really dialing in your settings to be able to get this gimbal to work perfect. Now, one thing that's good though is that there isn't a whole lot of micro jitters, and that's one thing that's really hard to clean up in post. So if you have like some shuddering effect going on, and I've had this on some of my past gimbals that I've reviewed, you just can't really clean it up. If the camera isn't perfectly stable and it sways a little bit, it makes it really easy to clean up in post. You just run it through a stabilization filter and all of a sudden you have perfectly smooth footage. So I wouldn't discredit a gimbal if it does have some slight movement, because no gimbal is perfect. Like I'm saying, I've worked with a lot of gimbals and all of them have their flaws, all of them have their issues. You have to remember that these are not perfect tools. You have to be able to work with these tools and their limitations to be able to get the footage that you want. So yes, this gimbal out of the box will work very well and it will get you smooth footage, but as soon as you put that footage through a second layer of stabilization, whether that be, on your camera or in post, you'll be able to clean it up and get even more stable footage. I highly suggest doing your stabilization in post, turning off your stabilizer in camera for most shots, because you might have some weird artifacting going on if you have your stabilizer on in your camera, especially with like the GH5 where it has lens and in-body stabilization. You might cause issues with the gimbal when you're out filming. However, you have to really kind of play with your setup and see if you're getting issues or not. There's definitely scenarios where I can flip on the stabilizer on the GH5 and work with the gimbal, and I'll be able to get smooth footage and not have to go through and stabilize it in post, but it doesn't work every time. So I highly suggest whenever you're working with a gimbal, and this is just a gimbal in general, that you play with your settings, you play with your post stabilization, and you figure out what method works best for you to get the footage that you need. Okay, so let's watch some footage straight from camera. I am not gonna tweak any of the settings whatsoever. This is 4K 60 frames a second. I like to shoot in that format because you get to see whatever movement this gimbal has. And like I said, I'm not cleaning any of this up in post. So we're just gonna watch the footage just straight from camera. So in terms of portability, you can definitely carry it with you on a backpack. I have the new Low Pro backpack that's all geared towards, mountain climbers, backcountry skiers, all that. And the MOZA Air fits nicely right on the side, kind of where a tripod would sit. So you can attach it to the outside of your bag. I tried to work with it in my in-case bag, which is like my go-to for anytime I'm doing something in a city or anytime I don't need the extra storage of one of these bigger bags, and it just slightly fits. It's kind of pushing on the edges. So that's one thing you gotta note. It's taller than a lot of other gimbals, so there's a good chance that it's not gonna fit inside bags, but you could easily strap it on the outside and works great. You do have to worry about a little thumb controller, making sure that you have it set up properly so that you don't end up destroying it by hitting it on something. So you can definitely tell that there are moments where the gimbal is not perfect, but there's also moments where the gimbal does work very well. So, like I was saying earlier, it really comes down to learning the settings that work best for your camera. And a lot of that's gonna depend on your weight, and it's gonna depend on making sure that things are balanced properly. If your gimbal's not properly balanced, that will cause things to start moving a little bit. And with this camera, when I was hiking, there's definitely times where the gimbal gets bumped. So I'm sure the balance came off a little bit. I could tell, like, I had to rebalance it multiple times. When I've been shooting with it, I've had to rebalance it here and there, but that's something you really need to be watching when you're actually shooting with a gimbal. You need to play your footage back. You can't just wait till you get in post and expect all your footage to be good. It's something that you have to kind of consistently be working on and be working with. So I just finished filming down at El Matador Beach. Definitely after like filming for a few minutes, you can start feeling the weight of this gimbal. And I only have a GH5 on there, so I can only imagine once you put a heavier camera, bigger payload, bigger lenses, it starts to get pretty heavy pretty quick. So one of the things you have to consider is that how long are your shots gonna be? How long are you gonna be running around with this gimbal in your hands? Do you have a way to hang on to it besides just holding it in your hand once you're finished? So like if you're running around with a backpack that is able to strap it on, it makes it a lot easier to use when you're on the go. And then if you're, if you obviously can bring more gear, pack it away nicely in a case, like a Pelican case, or, the case that comes with it so that you never damage it. But definitely it's not one that you're gonna like hand hold all day. You need to put it down, you need to set it down between takes. So when you're traveling, when you're on the go, you're really gonna have to plan out how much you wanna use it and have a system set up so that you can put it down in between takes, you have somewhere to strap it, you have somewhere to store it, because you're not gonna just be hanging on to this gimbal all the time. One thing that's really good about this weight, like I was saying, it gets rid of all that bobble. So when you're shooting stock footage, and I do a lot of stock footage, that's one of the ways that I bring in income from the footage that I'm shooting. Because this gimbal is heavier, it eliminates a lot of the up and down motion, which if your footage has that bobble in it, when you're submitting to stock footage, it's gonna get rejected. So in terms of getting silky smooth footage that looks like a dolly or a jib, this gimbal has the ability to get you that really silky smooth footage. And guys, if you're interested in more info about how you sell stock footage, I'll put a link down below in the description to my stock footage course. I have a step-by-step guide that teaches you how to make money selling stock footage. Now, would I suggest you get this gimbal? Well, there's kind of a few things you need to think about. What style of shooter are you? If you're someone that's run and gun and you're throwing this in your bag and you're using smaller cameras, then I would suggest getting a different gimbal out there. However, if you're working with bigger cameras, then you're gonna be dealing with bigger gear all around. So this gimbal actually isn't that big when you're working with these bigger cameras. It will actually fit nicely with all the other gear that you have. And like I said, it still is small enough that it does fit in my in-case bag, but it does take up a lot of space. However, if you have a big camera, I think that this might be a good option for you. Also, if you're not worried about space, if you're not worried about using this with a backpack, this might be a good gimbal to get. So if you're putting it in like Pelican cases, or you're putting it just in the case that it comes with and taking that to your shoots, then I don't see any problem using this gimbal. Its size isn't that limiting. It's a big gimbal. You pick it up when you need it, you shoot with it, and then you set it down. It's much better than dealing with like the two-handed gimbals, because those are so much more of a pain to work with. This, you just screw on the tripod on the bottom and you can set it down. It's not too heavy that you could probably work with it all day. You just have to take breaks. It will wear you out over time, but it needs to be heavy to be able to carry the cameras that it can carry. So guys, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the MOZA Air 2. If this is a gimbal you're considering, what do you think about the footage that I've got with it? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Guys, that is it. If you're new here to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. There's a lot of awesome filmmaking tutorials. I do camera reviews. I also do some YouTube training. And in about 7 days, I'm about to jump on a plane to go climb the 2 tallest peaks in Ecuador. Lots of awesome stuff coming on this channel. Also, make sure you head over to creatorfilmschool.com. That is my nuts to bolts, everything you need to know to have a career as a filmmaker or a creator. There's lots of awesome courses on there that's gonna take your filmmaking skills to the next level. All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you on the next one.